All right, welcome back. We promised to reconnect with Wendy Alberts, who is the CEO of the Restaurant Association of South Africa, and she's back on the line with us. And well, Wendy, let's pick up from where we were trying to link up, talking about the impact of the hard lockdown on restaurants throughout 2020.
Thank you so much. Look, I think it was a very challenging year for us as we've turned on the first year anniversary, and there's a lot of mistakes that I think have been made in the industry. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned out of the trying and difficult times that we've had, and we can only hope that moving forward that the government properly consults with us, that we don't lead into difficult hardships or unnecessary hardships like we have over the last 12 months. You know, I think as a restaurant industry, we certainly have been very supportive and very respectful of the President's command and the government's disciplines in executing the protocols for us and the restrictions and the different degrees of lockdown. And I think it's only fair as we move forward that they play a responsible role in ensuring that the vaccine and the rollout of the vaccine is played and expedited, and that we engage with government, that we don't have these cuts that put pressure on us at a very difficult time, and that our businesses are closed without notice and we left with stock on hand and our staff don't get proper UIF. There needs to be adequate consultation moving forward, and I certainly hope that there are no surprises lurking in the dark headways as we head into the Easter season.
Yeah, you know, Wendy, there was a serious problem as one was pondering how selling food during the pandemic, especially when the hard lockdown does not clearly explain scientifically how the spread of COVID-19 that can be adverse when it comes to food delivery. So if, say for example, with the benefit of hindsight, somebody's at home trying to order food from a restaurant and all the protocols of safety regulations are followed, how did you then put the argument forward to say that to package food and distribute it via deliveries was not going to increase the spread, because that has been proven over the years that when people order food, there has not been any case that was reported that someone got infected for receiving food at the gate or their place of residence.
You know, if we go back in hindsight, there's so many conversations to be had, and I think it leaves us very disheartened as where we've been left as an industry. You know, from being the most loved industry in South Africa and across the world, we in hospitality, we here to create beautiful moments for people. We had to feed the nation. We had to bring people into our establishments. One of the key things that a restaurant here has always been renowned for, especially in South Africa, the highest degree of safety and health standards. It's always been something that we've advocated for. We've been through various levels of training over the last years, and we've met up to and measured up to world standards. So, you know, whilst we were not COVID experts in the beginning of COVID, you know, after the first and second lockdown, there should have been a lot of learnings from what had been happening, and we shouldn't have repeated those mistakes. So when we look at the year that we had turned, and especially when we went into lockdown in December, you know, I felt that the industry had been very prejudiced and that the industry really didn't need to be slapped as hard as it did, given the amount of work that we had done and the protocols as well as the regulations that we had put in place and that we had so swiftly executed. The parts that should have been controlled were the uncontrolled spaces and the uncontrolled amount of numbers, you know, where people could move freely and have house parties and go underground parties and have street parties, etc., and cooler box parties and car wash parties, etc. Those are the uncontrolled spaces that caused the spread of COVID to take place. It wasn't within the restaurant establishments. And we're having this conversation again because we've been monitoring this again since the early January. We're now going on into the end of March. We've been tracking the trauma cases, and the trauma cases don't come out of restaurants. Restaurants are sophisticated, beautiful establishments where people sit down in an environment, that there is proper social distancing, that there is safety measures in place, that we adhere to all the regulations, and that we are there to keep the highest degree of safety for both our staff and our patrons. And if we look back on the amount of cases that have been reported into restaurants or through our establishments, it's minimal in comparison to the uncontrolled spaces. So we've been having this conversation, we've been putting out our press releases, we've been putting out these conversations to say to government, please, you need to look at where the situation really comes from, because it's not happening within restaurants. And to prejudice again and put restaurants at risk of losing their livelihoods. You know, if I go back to January and I think the desperate state we were in, the panic, the heartache. There was no cash flow coming in. There was no support from government. There was no financial reprieve from the banks. The landlords had already been exhausted by supporting us, and we were left out high and dry. And I remember I put a survey together that gave us a time frame, which was speaking of days, that was imminent to destroying a complete industry, which had always been the fabric of South Africa. It had been the place that people generated and got together in a beautiful space that celebrated Ubuntu, that celebrated the country, that celebrated the joys, the livelihoods, the messaging of what the landscape of South Africa represented. And we were put into shutdown without reprieve, without proper consultation, and without a rebuild program, which we're still sitting at. So again, as beautiful restaurateurs, we are self-built entrepreneurs, and we've had to recover and rebuild our space at the expense of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs that have been lost, and trillions of rands that have been lost in investments of beautiful businesses that have been shut down on the iconic landscape throughout South Africa because adequate consultation hadn't been done. And I can only hope, days away now from the Easter holidays, that there's no surprise and no playoffs again. You know, the conversations that we've had over the last months have been, you know, is it bottle stores? Is it restaurants? Is it pubs? Is it this? Is it that? We need to have proper scientific evidence if you want to close us down. You know, we're not going to roll over and we're not going to accommodate any more regulations unless there's evidence that's been put to us. You know, we've got a ton of court cases open. We've got the court case open against the Minister of Labour for the Act. We've got the court case open for the damages claim that has been put together from the loss of sales and the non-performance of enabling us to trade through difficult times. So we're saying government needs to consult with us. We need to have a detailed approach and give us scientific evidence to move forward before you bring any further extensions on our industry again.
All right. Wendy, I'm glad that you were able to answer and sum it up, especially with what I wanted to ask you. So then I guess in our next conversations, like I said to Lakin Timani, we need to follow up with government on the issues of lack of consultation. So you are the second person today who has reiterated lack of consultation concerning from government concerning some of the regulations that were imposed on several industries. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you so much. You know, in just closing, if I could just say, you know, government is not the experts on our industry. And unless they can consult with experts and bring expert evidence, they cannot be putting us, and there cannot be any dialogue or any conversations currently taking place of a further or harder lockdown or any further alcohol restrictions until they can prove that the restaurant industry is actually responsible for the transmission of COVID and the increase in numbers, which there absolutely isn't. So there's absolutely no relativity to closing us down for the festive holidays.
All right. Wendy Alberts is CEO of the Restaurant Association of South Africa, talking to us about this. And then I guess we have now actually established the common denominator in our discussion today with the previous two interviewees on this program: lack of consultation during the hard lockdown. Some regulations were imposed, but there wasn't any scientific evidence that was forwarded or put on the table to justify some of the decisions that were taken. So now that we're looking at the year on, so it's exactly 1 year since President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the total shutdown of the economy in a bid to stave off the worst impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the country's population.